Greg. How you doing, pal?
Good. What's up, fellas?
Hello, Greg.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Hello, Tony.
Let's dig right into it. What was your main takeaway from Vrabel today out at Indy?
I guess not exactly exciting or anything like that, but just these guys know what they're doing. Whether it's Vrabel, Cowden, Wolf, McDaniels, Terrell Williams, the adults are in charge. They know what they want. They have a game plan. Whether they'll be able to execute it, we'll see as far as free agency, trades, draft. But they definitely know what they need to do. I think the most interesting comment that I thought that Vrabel had in his various appearances was about the roster and about how he thinks it's gonna look dramatically different by the time the team breaks training camp, or at least like before the season. I think that's welcome. I think it's needed. I think we all know that. But to hear Vrabel say that, and I think and I talked about it last night on TV, with Holly about like just for example, the receiver room. And he talked nice about Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, and so is Drake May. But I think now between Vrabel and McDaniels, you guys are going to get a chance. Like last year didn't go well, but if you don't get your act together, if you're not a pro, if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, you're not long here, and that goes for everybody on the roster.
Let's hear it. Here's Vrabel.
Yeah, it's almost like a warning.
Vrabel today with the reporters on that very topic.
Obviously, you guys are going to be doing things a little bit differently on offense and defense this year. How do you feel about the fit of players on the current roster?
I think what the roster looks like today is going to be vastly different than what it looks like, in the end of August. We got a lot of time, so the fit, the players will determine their role, just like we always say. How hard they work, what they're willing to do to help us, how many positions that they can play, their versatility. So we got a lot of time for that. But if they show up, they're willing to learn, they're willing to work hard, be a great teammate. You can find places for guys like that.
Stood out to you too, Mazz?
Yeah, it was like a warning, really, again. It was, you show up, you're ready to go, you have a good attitude, we'll find a place for you. If your attitude sucks or you're lazy, you're out. That one did catch my attention, too. In real time, it was impossible not to notice that.
Greg, what do you think their plan of attack is this offseason?
I think their plan of attack is to be very aggressive on, any top free agents that might hit the market. We'll see about, T. Higgins and Ronnie Stanley and guys like that. I think that if there aren't those guys out there that they view as the type that they can give big money to and will definitely be impact starters on this team, then I think probably right now, and it's probably started a day or so ago, I think they are going to teams and agents and being aggressive as far as trades and, who might become available, especially at wide receiver. I don't think any offensive tackles are going to be available via trade. That doesn't normally happen, but and I think this will go to defensive guys. As we heard Vrabel talk about today about, noting that the Super Bowl was won basically on both sides of the line. I think they have a game plan. They'll try for free agency, but they're making other plans and aren't going to be afraid to pull off a major trade if it comes to that.
You wrote today about the spending we can expect from the team. Tell us more on that.
So, not to give people a popsicle headache or whatever, but, basically, you guys have mentioned the 90% floor as far as, the Patriots need to spend to this. And what happens is that's in 3-year increments. So this is the second year of where they need to be 90%. And so last year they actually spent above the cap. And when I talk about that, I asked Robert at the Gerard Mayo, after he fired Gerard Mayo, his press conference about this is going to be expensive bringing in a new coach and new staff. Is that going to affect what they're able to spend on personnel? And Robert, for the first time that I know of, admitted that they are a cash to cap team, which means that their budget, and it can go up and down, but their budget is just about what the cap is every year in terms of cash that they can spend. That's the first time I had heard him say that. And when you look back, the previous 3 years, the 3-year increment from 21, 22, and 23, the Patriots over those 3 years, not only did they exceed the 90% threshold where you got to give money back to the players if you don't hit it, they were over. They spent like 104% of the 3-year cap. And so using that as a guide, I sort of looked at it as, all right, well, what did they spend this past offseason, 2024, which is more than people think. Like they were about $30 million over the cap last year. What is how they spent previously? What does that say about what they're going to spend going forward? And I think that, roughly the bottom line is over the next 2 off seasons, in addition to this is on top of the players they already have on their roster, they have about $290 million to spend over the next 2 off season just to meet the cap.
And if they go a little bit over, I think the thing that you wrote is you can, again, based on if they're going to go 105% of the cap, and expect even 320 or something like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to illustrate it for people, the previous 3 years. So 2021, that was the big free agent year. Remember when they brought in all those guys, where there's Judon, Kendrick Bourne. So that year they were $53 million over the cap in terms of the cash that they spent. And Robert talked about when he gave that answer, he's like, we don't mind going over in a certain year, but you need to sort of smooth out the spending. The next year, Belichick was only $2 million over the cap. And then in year 3, he was $28 million under the cap. So at the end of the 3 years, they ended up spending $26 million over the cap. So we can use that as a guide to say, this is basically the budget that the Crafts keep football to in terms of spending on the roster.
I get it. We're counting real money instead of fake money, which I've been saying for 15 years.
Right.
We're all back in the same place.
In other words, the cap is...
Yeah, I mean, I will say this in terms of that. I don't think necessarily measuring the cap and impact on the cap is awful, but only if you're a good team, like the Patriots were for a long time. And you have good players who you're, spending a lot of money on. And so the cap does become an issue. But where the Patriots are right now, the cap is no issue whatsoever, as we know about the cap space. But it's not fans. My message was this offseason, don't worry about what's the cap number on that guy? How much is left? That's not what it is. What it is the Crafts want to know how much cash are we spending this year? And if you spend a lot this year, it's going to go down next year. So just be aware the cash is the most important thing when it comes to the Crafts and, frankly, every owner in the league outside of Jeffrey Lurie. But, of course, he has a really good roster every year, so he does have to spend on things.
This is not a news flash here. What my thing is, Greg, is that I just think the number of available guys out there is going to be it's scant because there's so much money out there. And so many teams, figured out it's simple as it is. Fake years, dummy years, void years, whatever. All those mechanisms to get around the cap. They've all figured these things out. And so, I feel for the Pats to spend the money, they're going to have to go big somewhere. And I still feel that's a possibility. And I just wonder if a trade is a more likely thing than a free agent. I don't know. But I do believe Vrabel when he says, hopefully it's aggressive and we're going to be aggressive. And sometimes when you want a car, if there's only one of them, you got to overspend for that one car because there's not a lot like them. And I do think they're going to try this again. But then again, Mayo thought the same thing. So why is this year any different? That's the question. Why is this year any different than last year?
I'm not sure. Just to let people know, I mean, even in a season, an off season, when fans and some media thought that the Patriots didn't spend enough because they looked at the cap space. The Patriots spent, about $30 million over the cap last year. And remember, Elliott Wolf was approved to do more, whether it was Calvin Ridley or Brandon Ayuk. So it sounds like they were prepared to go about $60 million over the cap, similar to Belichick's first year in that 3-year window. It would have gone down. Whether they're able to execute it, I don't know. I do think that trade's probably going to be the best route. Hopefully somebody shakes free like a DK Metcalf or an AJ Brown. But sort of looking at it, I projected the Patriots. If I think they're going to do what I believe, I think they're going to spend about $180+ million in the offseason, and you get there quickly with, you're paying like a wide receiver $35 million in year one, a Ronnie Stanley $30 million. The number 4 overall pick gets $24 million in year one, and then you can add a bunch of mid-tier guys that are anywhere from $20 to say $8 million in the first year. You could do a lot with that in terms of cash spending.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Felger and Mazz here. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.